Hi, this is AK, and today we will talk about the farm bill that has been repealed by Modi government. What's the entire case and how it happened? So, at 24th April 2021, government came with a legislation to change the farm laws in the country. They introduced three bills that has been a demand of farmers for a way too long period. It was a demand that they demanded for a very long period. And so government fulfilled it, but for some reason farmers weren't happy with it, and you can say a sect of farmers that weren't happy with it. To understand this, let's go a bit further. So if you look at the entire farm protest, there are mainly the farmers from where they were protesting were from Punjab and Haryana, and some were from Uttar Pradesh. So not Uttar Pradesh but Punjab and Haryana. And if you check the way these farmings happen in those states is there are a sect of small farmers, like which consist of over 90% of the entire farmer community, and then there are 10% who are which are called Arhatia. They are the farmers that have a big chunk of land everywhere, and they employ other people. It's not employment, somewhat like Mazuri Vyavastha, that these small people, like they are dependent on this big kisan, this Arhatia, to sell their crops and to do their biddings and everything. So this is a problem. So what happened is, just because it had a lot of provisions, the new formula had a lot of good provisions that people were free to sell anywhere they wanted. They can do a contract with a private agency also, like anyone who uses raw material for their ready-made products. They can make arrangement with them, and then they can do farming. And this way they didn't need to be reliant on these Arhatiyas. So what happened is, and if you think about the source of Arhatiyas' income, it comes from these people. It comes from off of these small farmers, because they do the work. They employ things, like they grow the farming. And what happens, because they don't have enough support, so what they do is, while they are farming, because they are poor, they don't have enough life support to support their families while the seeds are growing, while the crop is not entirely ready. So what happens is, they go to these Arhatiyas and ask for loans, and these Arhatiyas have crippled loan types things. And what happens when the crops come back, the Arhatiyas get their fair share of those crops. Think of it like this: they grow the crop, and even though they have taken a little bit of money, but because they have no other way to sell their wheat, so they will give them to Arhatiyas, and who will decide how their interest rate would be, how much they would get from their sales, how much they will get from them. And this way, the small farmers, which are in majority of them, and which are happy with this farm bill, they were getting ripped off by these Arhatiyas. So when Modi government brought this bill, what happened is, they sucked all the blood from all the money from the Arhatiyas, and they were left with nothing. So what happened then is, they started protesting. And you need to keep this in mind, that protest started after 1.5, maybe 3.5 months after the bill was passed in parliament. So it was not a natural reaction. Somebody instigated this. So think of it like this: prior to this Kisan Andolan, we witnessed the Sahib Andolan. So this is somebody is instigating all of these protests. And what happened is, think of it like this: a general farmer cannot sustain to protest for one year. Okay, it's not possible. If they were that rich, they didn't need to do farming, because let's admit it, farming is not a very full of money area for a person to do. It doesn't have a lot of money. So that's why farms are poor. That's why we need these reforms. So these are the reasons that. So who are these people who are protesting? Initially, there are all sorts of farmers. Why? In the first month or maybe 2 months. Why? Because they were being forced by these Arhatiyas, who had all the power in the Khap and all the Panchayat from where they belong, as they were forced to come here. Otherwise, they would have been cut off from the society, and it's not a pretty good way. It's not a pretty way to deal with things. So people came, but after 1 and 2 months, they had to go back to their homes, and that's why you saw the decrease in number. The tents after tents for kilometers, they were empty. There was no one living there, but the structure was already there, so it felt like people were still there, but they weren't. And since what happened is, After 1.5 years, the Punjab election came to, the UP election about to come in 2022. So what happens is in there and even in Punjab there is election, and these are the areas where these protests can affect the government. So that's why they decided a few days back to repeal this law, and the Modi came to television himself and apologized to the farmers that they weren't able to convince them that these are for their own good. Truth is, they were able to convince them. People were convinced that this is a good deal. But the people, the Arhatyas who were profiting from the old Vyavastha, old system, they weren't ready to let it go. They weren't ready to let all their profits go. So they stood their ground, and because the election is about to come, they had to succumb to their choices, succumb to their demands. And that's what happened. Anyway, I hope you get the entire picture. Have a nice day. Goodbye. Cheers, around.